Hello, this is old Mr. Kent of MrKent.com, and I'm on my Rad Rover e-bike, headed to a place not very far away to fly my DJI Mini 2 and get some video coverage of the construction site that I flew over before, and I'll put a reference to that video if you're interested. And they're actually taking taking an old farm field, turning it into a housing project. So we're going to go over there and we're going to take off, and we're going to watch earth movers. I don't know if you've ever watched how an earth mover works, but that's what's going on over there. And of course, they have to have dust control. It's against the law not to. And so they have these big spray trucks that go around and keep the ground wet, so that it makes as little dust as possible. And in my previous video, all they had accomplished was that little pond up in the corner up there. They were working on it, and then I think it was almost finished the next time I flew over here. But I took off and I saw what they were doing, and they're actually leveling out the area to the altitude that it needs to be. And by that I mean where the houses are, the ground's a little higher, and where the roads are, the ground's a little lower. So there you can see the earth mover is scraping dirt and picking it up and putting it into the container, and then we'll follow it around and we'll watch it dump the dirt. But maybe I can tell you some flying stories, or at least one, or we'll see how it goes. But in my previous videos, a couple of videos, I promised I would start talking about nighttime flying, because that's a totally different experience than daytime, because you got to fly by your instruments. And one thing that I noticed, one thing that I learned is when you're out over the open country, you see nothing except farmhouse lights and stuff like that. But if you drop something on the floor, you got to grab your flashlight and look around for it, because it's all totally dark inside the cockpit, except for the instrument panel, which isn't very bright. But one thing I discovered, which I never realized, I had a high-wing Cessna, and so whenever we flew over the city area, all the lights of the city would shine up, reflect off the wings, and it would light up the cab. So now you see he's going over there, and he's going to dump that dirt. And there's a guy down there, he's going to tell him where to dump it and all that kind of stuff. Well, anyway, so that's one thing I learned, but I've got a story to tell you. I'll put a little map up so you can see. About 10% or more of my flights were between Lewiston, Idaho, and Pasco, Washington, because my wife's folks lived there. And so I went over one evening, picked up Grandma. Now you can see he's gonna dump the dirt as he goes along. I went over and picked up Grandma. And we were headed back to Pasco from Lewiston, and it was totally dark out there. And as we were approaching Pasco, all the way over, we kept seeing this. It was like a commuter plane. It had lights along the side, but not a whole lot of them. And it would go, actually, we were flying west, and it would go north, and then it would turn around and go south. And it'd go north, and turn around and go south. So it was kind of strange, because generally, a commuter plane goes from point A to point B. As we got closer, we could see that also it was at just about the same altitude as we were. So he's coming back now. You see he's going to scrape up some more dirt, earth, I should say, and take it over there and dump it. And you'll notice that they have these little pathways that they take. And I don't know for sure, but I believe it's because that's where the streets are going to be, and they don't want to drive around where the houses are going to be built, because that packs the dirt down. But you do want the street to be packed down. Also, you'll notice that guy standing down there. If you have if you can see, he's got a pole with a little white thing on the top. And if you're not keeping up with the technology, that's a GPS device, and they have to have that down to a certain altitude, and so they use that stick. They also have a system set up so that they can have that on the tractor, and then as the tractor goes along, there you can see scraping up dirt. As the tractor goes along, its blade goes down or up, determined by what altitude the tractor is moving along. So anyway, so this commuter plane just seemed to be going back and forth, and we got closer and closer, and I don't know how many times it went back and forth. It's about a 100-mile flight, and my plane went 100 miles an hour, so it took us about an hour to go from Lewiston to Pasco. And the whole time, as we got closer to Pasco, the whole time that commuter plane was going like he would go like 6 or 7 miles north, turn around, go 6 or 7 miles south, back and forth and back and forth. And we just, you don't usually see that. So that was kind of strange and noticeable. So as we got closer and closer, he was at one particular point, he was down, he was on the south. He had gone south, and he was turning around. He was headed north, and we were going along across what looked to be like his path, and there he's scraping up dirt again. And so, I got a little bit concerned because I didn't know what was going on. And they got closer and closer, and it actually wasn't, like maybe we're a mile apart or something. But all of a sudden, that plane took a big nosedive. I mean, it just dove down, I don't know, maybe 1,000 feet, and then leveled out and continued to fly, but flew under us. And so I thought, well, that's kind of strange because, we didn't want to run into him, but I was going to do a maneuver if I needed to, but all of a sudden that commuter plane just dropped down and ended up flying underneath of us. Well, so we continued on, and I don't look out the back of the plane, so I don't know what they were doing next. But as we got to Pasco, got on the tower frequency, and told them, told them I intended to land. And then after the tower cleared me to land, well, then the commuter plane came on and apologized because what they were doing is they were checking out charts and I don't know what other and instruments, and that's why they were going back and forth. There were two, a pilot and a co-pilot, and they were doing some kind of a check on the plane. And so they weren't paying they were looking at charts while they're flying along. They were looking at charts and their instruments, just like you do it, when you're flying in the dark. And so they were flying along, looking at the charts and the instruments, and then I guess the co-pilot happened to look up and saw our plane come in their direction. And of course, he had no idea how close we were, so they panicked, or whatever you want to call it, and they dove down. And that's why they dove down, because he explained, and he apologized a lot because they weren't watching out the window like you're supposed to. So anyway, that was an interesting. I don't know what would have happened if they hadn't noticed us. I would have probably dove down, but anyway, they avoided the accident, and I was watching out the window, and they weren't. So that's how that story went. So anyway, now if you've been watching the earth mover, you know how earth movers work, and they scrape, and you could see the moving parts and all that. So I hope that it is helpful as an educational video. So now you understand. Well, anyway, I want to thank you for watching my videos, and God bless.